Christopher Columbus was born in Genoa, Italy, around 1451. His early life was marked by a fascination with the sea. Columbus came from a modest background. His father was a wool weaver and merchant. Despite limited formal education, Columbus was literate and knowledgeable in geography, astronomy, and history. As a young man, Columbus worked on merchant ships. This experience gave him a deep understanding of navigation and the sea. He sailed extensively in the Mediterranean and the Atlantic. By the 1480s, Columbus had developed an ambitious plan to reach Asia by sailing west. He believed this route would be shorter and more direct. However, his ideas were met with skepticism. Determined to prove his theory, Columbus sought sponsorship from various European courts. After years of rejection, he finally secured the support of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain in 1492. This backing set the stage for one of the most famous voyages in history. On August 3, 1492, Columbus set sail from Spain with 3 ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. His crew was a mix of seasoned sailors and inexperienced adventurers. They faced many challenges, including storms and the threat of mutiny. After more than 2 months at sea, land was sighted on October 12, 1492. Columbus and his men had reached the Bahamas, although they believed they were in Asia. He named the island San Salvador and claimed it for Spain. Columbus continued to explore the Caribbean, visiting islands such as Cuba and Hispaniola. He established friendly relations with some indigenous peoples, while others were more hostile. Columbus was convinced he had found the outskirts of Asia, unaware of the vast continents that lay beyond. The return journey to Spain was perilous, with storms and damaged ships. Yet Columbus arrived back in March 1493 to a hero's welcome. His reports of new lands and potential riches captivated Europe, leading to further expeditions. In 1493, Columbus embarked on his second voyage with 17 ships and over 1,200 men. This expedition aimed to establish permanent colonies and further explore the New World. They brought livestock, seeds, and settlers, ready to create a new society in the Caribbean. Upon reaching Hispaniola, Columbus found that the fort he had left behind was destroyed, and his men were killed by the local Taino people. Undeterred, he founded a new settlement called La Isabela. However, the colony faced numerous difficulties, including disease, food shortages, and conflicts with the indigenous population. Columbus continued exploring, discovering several islands, including Puerto Rico and Jamaica. He sought gold and other valuable resources to justify the Spanish investment in his voyages. Despite some successes, the harsh realities of colonization became evident. Relations with the indigenous people deteriorated as the Spanish imposed their rule and exploited local resources. Tensions and violence escalated, leading to a strained and hostile environment. Columbus's governance faced criticism and challenges from both settlers and indigenous leaders. Columbus's third voyage began in 1498 with 6 ships. This time he aimed to explore further south and find new territories. He reached the coast of South America, discovering the Orinoco River in present-day Venezuela. This convinced him he had found a new continent, not just islands off Asia. However, upon returning to Hispaniola, Columbus found the colony in turmoil. Settlers were unhappy with his leadership, and there were conflicts with the indigenous people. Reports of his harsh rule and mismanagement reached the Spanish crown. In 1500, the Spanish monarch sent Francisco de Bobadilla to investigate the situation. Bobadilla arrested Columbus and his brothers, sending them back to Spain in chains. Though Columbus was eventually freed and his titles restored, his reputation suffered. Despite these setbacks, Columbus continued to advocate for further exploration. He believed there were still new lands to discover and riches to be found. His determination remained strong, even as his influence waned. Section 5. The Fourth Voyage, Final Endeavors. In 1502, Columbus set out on his fourth and final voyage with 4 ships. His goal was to find a westward passage to Asia. Despite his previous failures, he remained hopeful and determined to achieve his mission. The voyage was fraught with difficulties from the start. Columbus faced fierce storms, shipwrecks, and hostile encounters with indigenous peoples. He explored the coasts of Central America, from Honduras to Panama, but found no passage to Asia. Stranded in Jamaica for over a year, Columbus and his crew endured severe hardships. They faced starvation, disease, and mutiny. Eventually, they were rescued by a Spanish ship and returned to Spain in 1504. Columbus's final years were marked by disappointment and frustration. He felt unappreciated and misunderstood, believing his discoveries had not been fully recognized. Despite his achievements, he struggled to secure his legacy and rewards. Section 6. The Columbian Exchange. Goods and Diseases. One of the most significant outcomes of Columbus's voyages was the Columbian Exchange. This term refers to the widespread transfer of plants, animals, culture, human populations, technology, and diseases between the Americas and the Old World. The introduction of new crops had a profound impact on both continents. Europe received potatoes, tomatoes, corn, and cacao, which transformed diets and agriculture. In return, the Americas saw the arrival of wheat, rice, sugarcane, and livestock such as horses, pigs, and cows. However, the exchange also brought devastating consequences. European diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza decimated indigenous populations who had no immunity. This led to a dramatic decline in the native population, altering the demographic and cultural landscape of the Americas. The Columbian Exchange reshaped economies, environments, and societies. It marked the beginning of a new era of global interaction and interdependence. The effects of this exchange are still felt today, influencing food, culture, and economies worldwide. Section 7. Impact on indigenous populations. The arrival of Columbus and subsequent European explorers had a profound and often devastating impact on indigenous populations. The introduction of diseases led to catastrophic population declines. Some estimates suggest that up to 90% of the native population perished within a century of contact. The Spanish conquest brought about significant social and cultural disruption. Indigenous societies faced displacement, forced labor, and the imposition of European customs and religion. Traditional ways of life were altered or destroyed, leading to loss of cultural heritage and identity. Despite these challenges, indigenous communities showed resilience and adaptation. They resisted European domination through various means, including warfare, negotiation, and cultural preservation. Some groups managed to retain elements of their traditional practices and integrate new influences. The legacy of this period remains complex and contested. While it led to significant cultural exchange and development, it also resulted in immense suffering and loss. The impact on indigenous populations continues to be a critical aspect of historical and contemporary discussions about colonization. Section 8. Governance and Administration Controversies. Columbus's role as a governor and administrator has been a subject of significant controversy. His leadership in the new colonies was marked by strict and often harsh measures. Reports from the time suggest he was authoritarian and sometimes brutal in his dealings with both settlers and indigenous people. His governance faced numerous challenges, including resource shortages, resistance from indigenous populations, and conflicts among the settlers. These difficulties were exacerbated by Columbus's inexperience in managing such a diverse and complex society. Accusations of mismanagement and cruelty eventually reached the Spanish crown. This led to the appointment of Francisco de Bobadilla as a royal commissioner to investigate the situation. Bobadilla's findings resulted in Columbus's arrest and removal from his position. While Columbus was eventually released and his titles restored, his reputation as a leader remained tarnished. His administrative policies and actions continue to be scrutinized and debated by historians, reflecting the complexities and challenges of early colonial governance. Section 9. Criticisms and Historical Debate. Christopher Columbus has been a figure of intense historical debate and criticism. While some view him as a pioneering explorer who opened the way for the European colonization of the Americas, others see him as a symbol of oppression and exploitation. Critics argue that Columbus's voyages initiated a period of conquest and colonization that led to the suffering and displacement of indigenous populations. His role in the transatlantic slave trade and the brutal treatment of native peoples are often highlighted as significant negatives in his legacy. Supporters, however, emphasize his navigational achievements and the boldness of his explorations. They argue that Columbus's voyages were a crucial turning point in world history, leading to increased global interaction and the eventual establishment of new societies. The debate over Columbus's legacy reflects broader discussions about the impact of European colonization. It raises questions about how we remember historical figures and the ethical considerations of their actions. This ongoing dialogue ensures that Columbus remains a complex and contested figure in history. Section 10. Columbus's personal life and final years. Columbus's later years were marked by personal and professional struggles. After his final voyage, he returned to Spain in poor health. He sought recognition and compensation for his discoveries. Despite his achievements, he felt unrewarded. Legal battles consumed his time and energy. These efforts left him frustrated. Columbus died on May 20, 1506, in Valladolid, Spain. His voyages set the stage for profound changes in world history. Section 11. Legacy and modern-day perception. The legacy of Christopher Columbus is multifaceted and continues to evolve. For centuries, he was celebrated as a heroic explorer who discovered the New World. However, modern perspectives have become more critical. The negative impact of his expeditions on indigenous populations is now widely acknowledged. In recent years, there have been calls to reassess how Columbus is commemorated. Some advocate for the removal of statues and the renaming of holidays.